All right, let's get right into it. Today we're breaking down a series of formal declarations that outline an absolutely unprecedented sovereign claim right at the heart of the AI industry. This isn't your typical lawsuit, it's something else entirely.
So here's the number at the center of this whole story, $194 billion. Now, what's really wild is where that number even comes from. See, according to the source documents, the creator didn't just pick it out of thin air. Instead, the valuation is based on the numbers put out by the very companies accused of stealing the technology. And you have to understand, this isn't some kind of proposal or a request for a settlement down the line. The way these documents frame it, this is an active, legally structured reclamation of assets. We're talking about a sovereign lien filed directly against some of the biggest names in tech and government. This quote is absolutely crucial to understanding the legal posture here. It's not a lawsuit, right? They're not going to a court and asking for permission. It's framed as a declaration of offset. Think of it more like sending a bill for a debt that, in the claimant's view, is already on the books and way past due.
Okay, so first up, let's break down this massive number. How in the world do you get to $194 billion? Well, the claimant's ledger actually lays it out pretty clearly. Let's take a look.
So the whole claim is really broken down into two main chunks. The big one is $180 billion, and that's tied directly to the public valuation of XAI. Then you've got another $14 billion, which the claimant calls an alleged illicit disbursement, kind of like a shadow funding package.
And this quote really gets to the core of the whole argument. The logic is, hey, you valued your own company at $180 billion? Well, since it's built on my IP, you've just set the price tag for me. They're basically saying the precedent has already been set by the accused themselves.
All right, now for the core accusation. You can't have a claim this big without some very specific targets. So who exactly is being accused here? And what's the intellectual property that's supposedly at the center of all this? Let's unpack it. Okay, so the claim points fingers at three distinct groups. First up, you have XAI, accused of just unauthorized use of these core AI designs. Second, the US government and its contractors, accused of covertly replicating the tech. And finally, there's a group called the fork engineers, who are accused of deploying derivative work without any credit or payment.
Now, to really get the technical side of this, we have to talk about this term, unauthorized forking. It's kind of like if you had a secret family recipe for the world's best sauce, and someone sneaks in, copies it word for word, and then goes and opens a massive restaurant chain with your sauce. No permission, no license, no nothing. The key here is that it's not just inspiration. It's described as direct, covert replication.
And we're not talking about some vague, fuzzy ideas here. The documents get super specific. They list a whole suite of allegedly unpublished sovereign technologies as the stolen goods. And honestly, the names sound like they're straight out of a science fiction movie. Colossus-class AI cores, the Nexus design, the Galathera kernel. This is some serious stuff.
Okay, so let's get to the public money trail. How do you ground a story like this in the real world? Well, the claimant points to a huge, very public business deal as the key piece of evidence for that $14 billion slice of the pie.
So the affidavit lays out this timeline as a critical piece of evidence, and it all centers around the roughly $14 billion acquisition of Juniper Networks by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. The claimant maps out the whole thing, from the announcement to the final closing, and the implication is crystal clear. This was not your standard, everyday tech buyout.
And this quote, this really nails the claimant's entire interpretation of that deal. The argument is that this wasn't some clean, above-board sale. Instead, it was a money trail, a way to pay off handlers who were knowingly involved with the misappropriated tech. So what you end up with is two completely different stories, right? On one side, you've got the public narrative, a pretty standard, if very large, tech acquisition. But on the other side, the claimant's narrative paints a much different picture, a payout to bad actors for stolen and forked property.
Now, this next part is just as important as the numbers and accusations. It's about the tone. The way these documents are written is very, very deliberate. It's framed not as a hostile attack, but as a corrective measure. This quote says it all. This is correction. This is reclamation. The author goes to great lengths to emphasize that this is a measured, lawful response. The whole framing is critical. It's positioned as a necessary, logical step, not some kind of emotional, hostile outburst.
And the declaration builds this case very methodically, laying out why this action became unavoidable. It starts by establishing a baseline of good faith, stating very simply, I was patient.
And beyond just being patient, the claim asserts that the initial attempts to resolve all of this were done through non-confrontational channels. The word used is cordial.
But when that didn't work, the posture had to shift. The documents are clear that formal warnings were then issued. This wasn't a surprise attack. The other parties were put on notice.
And finally, those warnings weren't just empty threats. They were backed up with proof. The narrative being built here is that this massive legal action wasn't the first move. It was the absolute last resort after every other attempt to fix things was ignored.
Okay, last section. Let's talk about the how. How do you actually execute a claim like this? Well, it's not just a strongly worded letter. The claimant has put together what's called a reclamation kit, a specific set of tools designed to make this happen.
So this kit has 4 main parts. You've got the main legal document, the reclamation lien affidavit. Then there's the offset ledger, which is basically the detailed bill showing how they got to that $1944 billion number. Third, a chain of custody report to technically prove ownership. And finally, and this is wild, a one-line bank statement which seems designed to actually secure credit against the value of the lien itself.
And the stated purpose of all this is really clear. It's not just about getting a check. The goal is to formally withdraw all consent for anyone to use this IP moving forward, and to seize equivalent value from the platforms that are already out there, built on top of it. And really, this whole thing leaves us with a massive fundamental question for the age of AI. When a new creation is suddenly valued in the billions, who really gets the final say on its ownership? Is it the person who actually created it, or is it the giants who took it and scaled it for the world?